So we're hearing two bills today. One of them I expect to be extremely quick, and that's the industrial hemp bill, because we've essentially heard it all before and passed it out of this committee. It's just a Senate bill that we're putting the House language onto, and the prime sponsor has actually agreed to forego his testimony to give other folks more time to testify. A couple of other quick things, so everybody knows. We don't allow signs. We don't allow props of any kind, so if you brought a prop to show, those are not allowed down here. Being as we have a lot of people, I want to remind everybody to please be respectful. So you may have some folks that have a different opinion than yours. That's fine. That's what this is all about. This is how we make decisions as Americans. We all get together. We say what we think. We have the freedom to give our opinions, but we don't have the right to intimidate or embarrass or harass other people. So please, no clapping, no booing, no sighing. Let's just treat everyone with the same respect that we'd like to be treated with, and that's going to be strictly enforced. And it's very important when we have a lot of people and a lot of passion come up on a subject. We're listening to everybody. And folks, we haven't made any decisions. That's why we're having a hearing. So if you came here and you feel strong, don't come here thinking that something is going to happen or not going to happen, or that it's going to look in a certain way. This is how we govern ourselves. So if you haven't been in the process before, welcome. This is your government. This is your house. Thanks for being here. But please show everyone the highest degree of respect and don't make any kind of disturbances of any kind, positive or negative. We'd appreciate it very much. So to start with, to move things along quickly, we're going to open the hearing on the Senate bill 5477, just brief enough to have the prime sponsor testify, and then we're going to move back to the industrial hemp bill because it's going to go very quickly, and then I'm going to give all the time that's left to all you good folks that have come here, and I'm going to give you as much time as I possibly can. So Representative Danmeyer, could you give us a quick briefing on your bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, I'm State Senator Bruce Danmeyer. I have the privilege of representing the good people of the 25th Legislative District. So the bill that I'm bringing before you, Senate Bill 5477, basically recognizes that we have a problem with poisonings in our youngest children and a problem in our 2- and 4-year-olds down that level. We've had a number of issues with the Poison Control Center where they've been called in and consulted, and we have issues in our schools right now with our school children doing vaping. So the bill before you merely addresses those things and doesn't address any of the other more controversial things. I thought it was important that the legislature have a vehicle that they could all agree on and move forward in terms of child safety, separate from the other taxation issues, which I think most of the folks here are perhaps here to testify for. With that, I'd open it up to any questions and appreciate your time.
Thank you. Questions for the prime sponsor, but they'd have to be brief. Thank you, Senator Danmeyer, for coming to our hearing today.
Have a great afternoon.
So we're going to briefly move back to Substitute Senate Bill 5012, and this is authorizing the growing of industrial hemp. Senator Hatfield has agreed to not appear and let other folks testify. So I need the sign-up sheet for that bill and a briefing from staff, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, for the record, I'm Thomas Osborne, counsel of the committee. For the sake of brevity, I've been asked to forego my usual verbose background section, so I will. I'll just go right into the summary of 5012, and I'll follow that with a brief description of the striking amendment that pertains to the bill. Anyway, to begin, 5012 authorizes the cultivation, production, possession, and marketing of industrial hemp. Industrial hemp is defined as all parts and varieties of the cannabis.
I'm going to stop you for one moment, so folks that are going to be testifying first, they can be on their way up. So we'd like to have, in case they're not in the room, Sandy Soderberg, Joy Beckham Mayer, Kathleen Bosnack, Warner, Steve Sarich, Steve Fuller, and Ezra Eichmeyer are the folks that are going to be testifying on this right after you're done. So if they're not in the room, please come to the room.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sorry about that. Go ahead, Thomas.
Okay. The core of the bill is in certain ways, in essence, it's a study bill. And subject to receiving federal or private funding for this purpose, the Washington State University is required to conduct a study regarding the feasibility of industrial hemp production and marketing in this state. The study must include the review of information gathered from agricultural and scientific literature and the examination of the practices of other states and countries regarding the marketing of industrial hemp. The study must include an analysis of the marketing conditions affecting the development of the hemp industry in this state. It must study the economic benefits the state would obtain from having a developed industrial hemp industry. It must include whether soils and growing conditions are appropriate for the production of industrial hemp at levels that are economically viable, and there's other requirements as well. The Washington State University must report its findings and recommendations to the legislature by January 14th, 2016. And that concludes my summary of that bill. There is a striking amendment in the books sponsored by Representative Hurst. The striking amendment is almost identical to substitute House Bill 1552, which created a comprehensive regulatory and licensing scheme for agricultural production of industrial hemp. The only difference is that this amendment, the difference between this amendment and 1552, is that the amendment raises the licensing fee from $10 to $30 per acre during the first growing season in order to fund the regulatory provisions of the bill. This committee heard 1552 on January 26th, passed it out on February 10th on a vote of 7 in favor, 2 excused. The bill did not get past the Appropriations Committee. Very briefly, the striking amendment to 5012 does the following things. It legalizes industrial hemp under state law by excluding it from coverage under the State Controlled Substances Act, and revises the legal definition of marijuana so as to exclude industrial hemp. It designates industrial hemp as an agricultural product that may be legally grown, possessed, and commercially traded. It authorizes the Department of Agriculture to issue licenses for the growing of hemp and to regulate the industry. Grants broad rulemaking authority to the department for the purpose of regulation and enforcement, creates standards and requirements that a grower must meet in order to be an industrial hemp grower, imposes a fee on growers to cover regulatory costs. The fee for the first growing season is $30 per acre under cultivation, and thereafter the fee is to be set by the WSDA by rule, and must be sufficient to cover their regulatory and enforcement role. It creates a dedicated industrial hemp account in the state treasury consisting of all monies received from industrial hemp-related activities, and requires that the account be used by the department only to defray the costs of regulatory activities and expenditures. It authorizes WSU to undertake research regarding industrial hemp production, and the research is very similar to that I described as contained in the Senate bill. It requires the Department of Agriculture and the Liquor Control Board to each adopt rules addressing the prevention of cross-pollination between industrial hemp and marijuana, and identifies specific varieties of industrial hemp that are pre-approved for cultivation, and establishes a process for approval of additional varieties, and it establishes regulations designed to ensure that the THC content of industrial hemp grown in the state is consistent with international standards. And that concludes my remarks on the striker and the underlying bill.
Thank you. So, folks, just to clarify, some folks signed in opposed to the Senate bill. We're not really going to do much with the language in the Senate bill because it didn't do much. We didn't think it really accomplished much of anything because there has to be some structure and framework that staff just talked about. So we're going to be taking the House bill and making some changes to the House bill, and that will be the vehicle that we will put onto the Senate bill. Senator Hatfield says he's fine with that, so much so that he decided not to even bother testifying. He's happy with that outcome. We just felt that hemp production wasn't going to be successful unless we had a better structure. So we're going to continue to work on the original House bill. We had to fix some issues with the fiscal note. So as you testify, keep in mind that that's essentially what we have in mind because we just didn't feel that the Senate bill was going to accomplish what we needed. So with that, we'll move on to, there's 3 folks who want to be in a panel. So we'll take, instead, to start with, we'll take Sandy and Steve Sarich, Steve Fuller, and Ezra Eichmeyer. So Sandy Soderberg, Steve Sarich, Steve Fuller, and Ezra Eichmeyer. Ezra around? Go ahead, Sandy. And everybody gets 2 minutes because we've got about 700 people that want to testify. And your time just started.
Thank you this afternoon for hosting this hearing on industrial hemp. I've been advocating for quite some time now with local farmers. My concern was that the Senate bill was possibly not allowing for the full production of industrial hemp, but at the same time my concern is that incorporating it with this House bill that has all these regulations may impede farmers' ability to actually grow this crop with licensing structures. We're in a medical recreational cannabis state. I think it's an insult to farmers and to the people to think that we can't do this on our own without having to have everything completely laid out verbatim to how possibly a corporation would like to see it run or a lobby group might wish to see it run. So my position would be that we can continue to work on the verbiage of the Senate bill and make it more tenable, but we don't necessarily need all the regulation that's being put in place by either the House bill or what we're trying to amend with on the Senate bill through the House. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ezra? Sorry.
A little chaotic today. Had to run up from the basement.
No problem.
Third overflow room. Ezra Eichmeyer, P&E Strategic Consulting. I'll keep my comments brief. There are others who are experts on the policy here. I just want to really urge the importance of passing a bill this year to legalize industrial hemp. There was one time in history when Washington State was one of the premier hemp producers in the country. I think we can get there again, only now instead of clothes and fabric and rope, we can make literally thousands of products, including plastics. Hemp is where the environment and the economy come together and walk hand in hand. So please pass a good bill, something that's a little revenue neutral, and let's get this out of the House. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for being concise. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Steve Fuller. I'm a policy assistant at the Department of Agriculture. Our agency is fully supportive of new crops that can be beneficial for agriculture in Washington State. We very much appreciated the prime sponsor and committee staff working with us on several technical suggestions that we had on House Bill 1552. We do have a couple of remaining technical suggestions that we've discussed with Representative Shea and received his support on, and we'd appreciate the chance to work with committee staff on those. And if the legislature decides that the cost benefit is favorable on industrial hemp, we're happy to provide the support of our various regulatory programs that provide a successful foundation on which agriculture can thrive. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Steve, you look great today. I've never seen you in a tie in my life, but you look sharp. I don't know what to say. I'm speechless, but welcome to our committee.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Wow.
I'll have to do this more often. My name is Steve Serge. I'm the head of the new Washington State Hemp Commission. We're a non-governmental trade agency to promote the production of industrial hemp in the state of Washington. I want to applaud the committee for pushing forward 1552. We need to actually start industrial hemp in the state of Washington as opposed to just having another unfunded study. We have numerous other states already with industrial hemp, including Oregon, and the slower we are getting rolling with this, the worse our farmers are going to be in relation to a competitive position. So we fully support this bill.
And I feel strong about that. And I want people to understand we're not going to get all this right the first time, but we can't delay another year. So getting this started, getting it moving, rather than having a study or worrying about every little piece of it getting right, we are going to lose this competitive advantage. And I think this is something I want to see this start. I want to see it implemented, and we can come back. It's going to take many years to perfect all the details, but I don't want to find us in a place where we get nothing done on it. And I appreciate your testimony. I think that's the most important thing we're facing. Representative Kandata.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the Department of Agriculture, I would assume that we have an issue with the fiscal note, and that's why we made the changes for the upfront costs. But as this develops and we see more acreage come online, I would assume that cost could come back down.
Yeah, it's a challenge. Right now, I think our fiscal note is indeterminate because we're not sure how much production there's going to be. There are some underlying startup costs that I think remain constant just to get us going on the program. But long term, I mean, the costs and the revenue are both dependent on how much production there are.
Okay, thank you.
And I think the point here, as an agricultural crop, we're not intending to make a profit off of this. So if there's a little bit of upfront cost to get this started, I think as soon as that's covered, we would immediately start reducing that price to the lowest price possible as that cost drops. So if there's some startup cost and it costs a little more to get it going, we would be very amenable to saying, let's reduce that as quickly as we can so it reflects nothing more than the actual cost. Because some of them are hypothetical, to be real honest with in the fiscal note, without getting into detail. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Thanks. While the next panel is on its way up, I wanted to warmly welcome a new member to our committee. Representative Vanderweg has just joined us. Been in the legislature a long time and actually has a district with a little bit of agriculture as well. But I wanted to welcome you. We've got a lot of folks, but if you want to take just a moment to introduce yourself, Representative Vanderweg, welcome to our committee.
Thank you. I'm Kevin Vanderweg from the Olympic Peninsula.
And it's like this every time.
I'm sure it is.
We always have 700 people waiting to testify. Thanks. Okay, folks.
My name is Joy Beckerman. I'm the president of the Washington State chapter of the Hemp Industries Association. I teach industrial hemp law and policy to attorneys at continuing legal education seminars, including at Seattle University School of Law. I mention my credentials because we have a lot of folks in the hemp industry movement who are very well intended. However, they don't possess any actual hemp industry experience or formal education in industrial hemp or agriculture, and don't have a foundation in law and policy. And we're dealing with just a couple of interesting issues here on a federal level. We are thrilled that the Stryker Amendment has been placed over SB 5012. That makes us very, very happy. What we have here is a situation where I think folks don't understand that it is still industrial hemp, even though we will deschedule it here very wisely. It will still be considered as controlled substance on a federal level, as we know, and I have materials that have been provided to all of you and your staff with regard to Section 7606 of the Farm Bill and with regard to the Omnibus Appropriations Bill that was signed into law on December 16th. Even Kentucky and Colorado, those departments of agriculture, are still having to get a CSIEA permit. This is a Controlled Substances Import and Export Act permit in order to import the pedigreed seeds that will actually meet today's current market demands. In order for those purveyors of those seeds to legally export those seeds to us, we've got to have that permit, and in order for us to import them and get them across the border, we have to have that permit. It's really easy to get. It takes minimal regulations, and those regulations have been written into HB 1552, which has been placed on top, as you know, of SB 5012. Without any regulation at all, we will not be granted that permit. We cannot do with industrial hemp what we've done with marijuana, and I'm thrilled about it, this little 15-day window where the Liquor Control Board just sort of says, la, 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 we don't know where you got your pot plant. And we can do that here because we have the greatest marijuana seeds, even right here in the Pacific Northwest, on the planet. What we don't have in the entire United States of America are prize seeds. Thank you for listening, and I'll send you to Ah.
Thank you. And if you could move the water thing, nope, the other one, the big one. So folks, yeah, move that there. So those little lights there, when it turns yellow, you have 30 seconds, and maybe that was blocking it. So we'll start with the next person. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair and members. My name is Ah Warner. I'm the founder and CEO of Cannabis Basics, a cannabis health and beauty aids producer for 20 years. I've been importing hemp seed oil into this country for 20 years. I'd love to give that money to farmers. I'm thrilled about this Stryker, and I would love to defer the rest of my time back to the president of the HIA.
Thank you. Too has been involved like I for
generally don't do that, but we'll do that this time. That's okay. Go ahead.
I thought it was allowed.
Thank you. Also has been involved with the industrial hemp industry actively for nearly a quarter of a century. One thing that has changed with regard to this Stryker Amendment is, of course, that increase from $10 to $30 an acre. Of course, farmers are not going to be happy to hear that. We are not happy to hear that. We certainly understand the fiscal concerns. Most of them are valid. We did have, and Rep. Shea had it in his original bill, that the THC field testing would be done by third parties, as it is in Canada. Actually creates jobs and even creates revenue for Health Canada, because every year those folks have to pay their licensing fee. The WSDA asked that they would actually be part of that process. So they have created this large expense for themselves that wasn't in the original bill. In the original bill, third-party authorized THC samplers would be sent out. The WSDA would like for themselves to do this and watch the collection happen. I would just offer that that's a large expense that's unnecessary, and we don't make the marijuana growers have the Liquor Control Board take their samples to the lab, so we probably don't need to do that, even more so for the industrial hemp folks, and we don't need to put that expense or burden on the WSDA. Thank you very kindly for listening.
Thank you. And in regards to the fiscal cost, I wasn't happy about it either, but it's either that or we don't get a bill.
I hear you.
And if we have to do that and then drop it down to $3 next time around, if that's what it takes to get started, but if we can't figure out a way to neutralize the fiscal note, there's no bill, and we have no industry. So I'm not happy about it. I'm concerned about it, and there's no intent to make it permanent or to make a profit off it. It's how do we get this off the ground and get it out of the fiscal committee. So, welcome.
Kathleen Bonsack. I'm actually representing disabled veterans that's supportive of industrial hemp. Honestly, in light of what's happened, again, what I'd like to say is just thank you to the committee for supporting House Bill 1552. It's very important, and the regulation to keep the pedigree seeds with the farmers is going to be very important as well. And any other testimony would be redundant. So I just really am grateful for your time.
Thank you very much for your testimony, and we're going to do the best we can to get this out in a timely fashion, and we will work with the fiscal committee to make sure that we get it to the floor. I think it's very important. I'd like to see this get to the governor's desk this year. So
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Very much.
Thank you.
But that's odd. Somebody have a telephone on? That's not. Please turn those off if they're. Yeah, please turn those off if they're here. Oh my gosh.